Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Conrad, I'm Jack, 45. Bit of a long break. 6 match weeks we missed, but
6 match weeks felt like in 3 days.
it did. It did. It's not been 6 full weeks, but it's been a lot of matches and a lot of exciting action because a lot of managerial change, a lot of just new changing faces in the Premier League.
And some FA Cup embarrassments for a few teams.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they had that little break for those matches, and now they're resuming into full action for teams in 2020 in the Premier League. There are some great ones in this weekend to return to the new decade.
Week 22 thus far, we've predicted 49 matches. I am just under 500. Jack doing much better than me. We'll see how we do. We're only doing 3 this weekend, so I don't have the ability to pick up too much ground.
2-1 sounds like a easy proposition to try and get some momentum back for the new year.
Says the guy who's 7 games over 500. We start in London for the top 6 with an asterisk battle because while Spurs are 6 on 30 points, they are ahead on goal difference on Wolves. They have a 3-goal difference better tally thus far. Liverpool obviously 58 points, first place, 14 points ahead, 13 points ahead of the second place team last year, 14 ahead of City with a game in hand.
Exactly. They're absolutely cruising. And for Spurs, I think it's a very important match for them because obviously you're chasing Manchester United in 5th. You're a point behind them, and you're 6 behind your London rivals Chelsea. But also chasing you is obviously Wolves. We're tied with you. A point behind you, Sheffield United. 2 points behind you is Crystal Palace. And 3 points behind you are your North London rivals, Arsenal. So obviously there's a lot of teams that are chasing, and this is going to be a really tight race for those spots. And it's going to be a bit of a side note is very interestingly, very soon there's going to be the 3rd tier European competition where it's going to be around those places that you're going to be qualifying for Europa League 2. And so it's going to be fascinating in the next coming years. Although it's a made-up competition, it's going to be really fascinating to see these teams like Crystal Palace, Sheffield United, Wolves, who are fighting, and they're ahead of some of the top 6 clubs, and Leicester City especially are the big example, who are not a top 6 club, but they're cruising in 2nd place.
I don't understand how that 3rd European Cup is going to work. They've already struggled to draw for the Europa League Cup. So the Premier League stadiums are empty for those
Add another one. Europa League is no longer the worst European competition. If you're in the Europa League now, there's a team that's worse than you down there in Europa League 2.
Is that what they're going to call it? Europa League 2?
I don't know what they're going to call it. That's what they call it on Football Manager. Is a Euro Cup 2 with like the Roman numerals. So I don't know what they're going to call it, but Spurs, obviously, their aspirations are much higher than Euro Cup 2. They're reigning Champions League finalists. They should be doing better this season. I think Mourinho's got them on the right track, but this is going to be a really tough match to get back on track.
It is. We got Harry Kane out injured. He's going for surgery. He's going to be out until April, I think, is the last day we saw. Heung-min will be back. Liverpool, meanwhile, go to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the first time. And it looks like they may be in luck getting Shaqiri Matip back in training. Fabinho may be also available for selection. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain returning. But they are without Milner and Keita injured again.
Yeah.
The groin in the warm-up against
It's frustrating
Everton.
for Keita because he had that really brief couple matches where he was really doing so well. And you saw the potential that he has and why Liverpool spent a lot of money on him. Unfortunately, though, he obviously had that injury, and they're hoping that he can begin to recover and get more long-term stability and consistency, or he risks becoming a more injury-prone player.
He's a Daniel Sturridge.
He is, but Daniel Sturridge showed it for a full season in the 2013-14
He had
campaign.
50 goals. He's the 10th leading goal scorer for Liverpool.
Exactly, but I think another thing, it speaks to the juggernaut that Liverpool is, that they can lose Fabinho, who, in my opinion, is the best defensive midfielder in world football. You could lose him, and it doesn't look like you're...
Henderson drops right into his spot. Don't miss a beat.
You replace him, and it feels like they don't miss him. Obviously, they would love to have him back on their side because he makes them so much better defensively, but they might be getting him back, and that's going to be a huge boost for them as they get into January, which has historically been a really tough month for Liverpool as a football club. They obviously got that big win over Everton with the local kid, Curtis Jones, picking up the winning goal.
Poor Everton.
The funniest thing was watching Jordan Pickford's small arms reach for that football. It was just hopelessly out of his reach.
That was a Coutinho special. Is what that
it
looked
was.
Like him in his heyday.
Exactly. And Liverpool, they have so much young talent, and they have so many pieces to just fill and replace. It is a machine that Jurgen Klopp has built, and Mourinho is in the beginning stages of his personal development of a machine. And I think that's why we both have a very similar outlook on how the game's going to end.
3-1. I don't. It could get out of control. Who knows? I mean, if somehow Mourinho's only ever beaten Klopp twice out of the 10 times that they've played, which is his worst record against any manager other than Ronald Koeman, which is weird.
The obvious managerial just bug for Jose Mourinho.
Really weird. But I don't see Spurs being able to get their stuff together in order to get anything meaningful out of this match. Spurs obviously need the points, but Liverpool have dropped points once against their rivals United, and I don't see that happening here. On to Bramall Lane, where Sheffield United and Mr. Wilder were host. Mr. Moyes, who makes his return, his second match in charge in his second spell at West Ham. His first match, they won 4-0. I don't know that this one will be quite the laugher.
Yeah.
West Ham 22 points, 16th place. United, surprising maybe, 29 points.
Oh, very surprising. Very surprising. You didn't expect them to be the team that's up there, but Sheffield United are one of the reasons why this league, except for Liverpool, has had more parity than pretty much almost any year. Any team on any given day could lose to anybody. And it's because of teams like Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, Wolves, who have gotten a lot of points to this point. And what happens when you get points as a team that is lesser reputation and expected to be lower in the league? Well, you're taking them off of teams you probably shouldn't be taking them off of more historically, and that is the top 6 clubs, and that just brings that gap closer together. And you could argue that it's just a very temporary thing, as there's a lot of top 6 clubs in transition.
I mean, it has spread that from 6th to 18th is 10 points.
Exactly.
At one point it was 7 points, then it was 9, now it's 10. It's drifting a little bit, but not quite as much as you would expect.
I mean, it's drifting closer to the mean of every Premier League season, which is where there's a big gap between a team who is going to be in the highest European competition and those who are going to be sent down to the Championship. There should be a big difference, but there's not in the Premier League right now. And that just speaks...
1st to 6th is 18 points, and then 6th to 18th is 10.
Exactly. And that just shows the level Liverpool are at and the intense competition that exists, and that's motivation for West Ham, who find themselves in 16th place. And you say that they are obviously 8.8 places behind Sheffield United, but they're only 7 points behind them. So a good run for you, a bad run for a team like Sheffield United, and you're right back up there. And that's why a lot of teams have made a lot of managerial changes at this point in the season. They've jumped ship from managers who have not shown signs of turning things around for that instantaneous managerial flip, where the players are now motivated to prove themselves again, and they're trying to keep things together. Unless you're Everton, yeah. Carlo Ancelotti not able to monument a win at Anfield over Liverpool's kids.
We'll get that one in a minute.
Exactly,
but
yeah.
So we were similar on this one. Initially I had it 2-2, but I pulled it back to a 2-1 win for Wilder and his kids. He's going to be at full strength health-wise, which is great at this time of the year. Usually you're suffering 1, 2, 3 key injuries.
Exactly.
To have a full side healthy, and they've been playing pretty well.
It is.
I think this, and playing at home,
I think it's gonna be close. I think for the reasons you mentioned, that Sheffield United are going to be very good, but also West Ham are finally showing some signs of life. They have a lot of talent. I think they have more just pure talent than Sheffield United do. They're not as good a unit, but I think that the talent will make it a really interesting matchup between these two teams.
The Hammers do have a little bit of injury. Frederick's out, Wilshere out, Antonio out, Yarmolenko. But again, to your point, I think they've got enough to overcome that, but I don't think they've got enough to overcome. And the third match for us this weekend, Villa at Villa Park hosting Man City. City coming off the midweek, just crushing of their crosstown rivals, Manchester United. Just made them look absolutely terrible.
People floated during halftime, is this going to be another 6-1 Manchester City win? It didn't end up like that, but it was at the same level of domination where you realized, although Ole got one over Pep earlier on in the season, the teams are not anywhere close to being on the same level. And you don't really necessarily blame Ole solely for that. There's a lot of just talent lacking in Manchester United right now. And honestly, right now, Manchester is very blue.
100% blue. Villa, 21 points, 17th place. City, well ahead, 44 points, 3rd place, but again, still 14 points behind league leaders with a game more played. So Pep Guardiola has come out and said the league is over, no chance, and I think he's just doing his typical mind games because you never know what's going to happen.
Liverpool could capitulate.
They could completely fall apart.
You don't expect to see it, but obviously Manchester City are going to do their best to keep the push up. And there's a lot of interesting situations for City, very long term for them. Is will Guardiola leave in the summer? Will he stay around for another season? Because they're going to need to make a lot of changes in the summer if he does stay. Because this side right now, I think it's past its window, and they overstayed their welcome, and now they need to
There's so
change.
much money invested in that side.
And I think that the issues for them is that they have older players in key areas that they need to replace. I think that
Fernandinho.
they've made poor investments ultimately, and I think what's really shown is that you can throw money at a lot of things, but sometimes it's not going to work. Obviously, City will not be saying it didn't work when they were back-to-back champions, but Liverpool have invested less than them in terms of a net spend, but they've been very effective in what they've bought, and they have. I can't say that Liverpool made a bad purchase in the last couple of years, and that just speaks to how good they are.
Minamino business shows yet another shrewd
Exactly.
purchase.
For Manchester City, for them, I think the big issue is their fullback positions. I think Kyle Walker is not performing badly, but was he the greatest investment? I think he was a pretty good investment, but
It's a £50 million deal.
exactly. Benjamin Mendy, I think they will really regret that one. That was around £50 million as well, and they're already looking to offload him as well. Leroy Sané may be looking to head to Bayern, but they're saying that might not happen
He
this
may
window.
come back
He's going to be a
healthy here
big
soon.
deal for them because he's obviously a great forward, and they've missed Laporte and Sané. So with those two coming back, don't write the title race off just yet, because Manchester City last year, when they had just a 1-point lead over Liverpool, they won the last dozen games
And
in
they
a row.
were 10 points behind on Christmas.
Exactly. They showcase that they can come back from large deficits. They did it last year, and they're going to say to themselves, let's do it again. And the only way you can do that is by winning all your games. And this is a game where I think they're going to try and assert their dominance against an Aston Villa side who really are up in turmoil with their head
Mike
coach.
Dean squarely on the hot seat.
He is. And I think they have a lot of talent, and they invested a lot of money, obviously. They're looking at new striker options for them because that's
Getting
one of the
Danny
big
Drinkwater
keys.
in on loan.
Did bring Danny
Good move,
Drinkwater in.
I think.
I think the move to Chelsea was one of the worst purchases in recent years.
It was terrible.
£35 million for a
Good
guy,
player, not for Chelsea.
not a good Chelsea player. I think everyone realized that. They were saying, Danny Drinkwater, you had a great season, title-winning year with Leicester, but you
Top 5 name in the Premier League.
you don't belong.
Danny Drinkwater.
You don't belong there. Like, it was just it felt wrong from the offset. I think Aston Villa, not to say he's a bad player, because he's a phenomenally talented player.
He was great at Leicester.
Aston Villa is going to be his kind of club. I think that's a great deal right there.
Yeah.
They're linked to Michy Batshuayi, possibly, as a guy to bring up front. Jared Bowen, he's a winger for Hull City down in the Championship. He's a guy he's a young guy. He's constantly floated with teams. I see him as a remake of Jack Grealish. He's a young guy who's kind of underrated, and there's a lot of doubt about him because a lot of young English players do end up flopping. But I think he would be a good purchase for them. They have a couple options to make. This game they're going to struggle in, though, because they're playing the big dog in the Premier League, the two-time defending champion, and I see them getting thrashed, honestly. I think Jack Grealish is one of the most underrated players in the league. I think they do well to keep him this window, even though Manchester United are really heavily linked to trying to sign him. That'd be a really big keep for them if they can keep him.
This is as good as a signing for them.
It is, because he is. If people doubted him entering this season, he's proved everyone wrong. He's been good in every single match, pretty much. And he's showcased that
And he gets fouled a ton.
he replaced Eden Hazard, honestly, in that facet where he beats you, so the way you stop him from beating you is you just hack his ankles down and you foul him.
Hope for the best.
And you hope for the best. Exactly.
4-2 and 2-0. We've got a couple of other things to talk about. Obviously, you mentioned earlier in the show all the managerial changes. Mikel Arteta coming in from assistant manager with City alongside Pep Guardiola. Coming in, club legend, obviously there during the Invincibles season,
Exactly.
plus others. Has already put a lot more clarity, a lot more structure around the club. I think they may be able to keep Aubameyang as a result. I think he's going to try to keep Xhaka, which would be interesting if he can redeem him.
Him and Xhaka, not him and Xhaka, Torreira and Xhaka have looked great as a midfield too, and that's just a case of a new manager comes in, every player gets a fresh start, and obviously Xhaka looked like a dead man walking when he walked off that pitch,
Oh, it was awful.
throwing the armband. It was a bad end for him as a captain of Arsenal, but I don't think his Arsenal career is over just yet, because when he was at Borussia Mönchengladbach, he was a phenomenally physical, good on the ball. He was going to be the next big star for Arsenal coming into the year, into this year. I don't think that he has not quite lived up to that expectation.
That's his hothead. He's got to be able to control that temper.
Guendouzi, Torreira, Xhaka. We always said that's a phenomenally three talented midfielders. and they just never quite.
They never had a
materialized
philosophy,
under,
and I think that's
under
what
Emery.
I think that's what Arteta
See,
is doing.
with Arteta he's a club legend. He expects to have passion for the shirt. That's a big deal. You see that with Manchester United and Chelsea. Both have club legends. I think you could say Solskjaer is a club legend for Manchester United after his shot in the '99 Champions League final. They had they brought in a lot of passion for the club immediately. But the question is, will there be long-term tax? And I think that there is a good
They have to
showing
do
for
good
that.
transfer business.
I saw a couple small things that he would do. He would have the team train at the Emirates, where he would have them do their training sessions in the stadium because he wants them to get more comfortable on the pitch in that environment. Because it can be Arsenal can feel a little bit. We talk about this sometimes. Again, feel a bit like corporate. Exactly, as much of tourists who are watching the games, and that's how football's kind of changed a little bit. But you got to adapt. You got to have the passion. You got to engineer it yourself, even if the fans don't necessarily bring it. And I think Arteta is doing a great job to bring the passion back to Arsenal. And even if you don't finish in any European spot this year, they're currently in 10th place. If you finish in 10th place, but showed some bit of optimism and made some smart investments in the transfer window, there's no reason why they shouldn't be slightly optimistic.
I can't see them finishing in 10th. Not with what he's doing. They've made a good run the last couple of matches. They've looked much, much better. I think it
2-0 win against Manchester United was huge. And I think a big deal for them is capitalizing on their investments. We'll talk about that with Ancelotti obviously next. Is even if you've made some dud signings, you got to be able to come up with a way to turn them into something. So Nicolas Pepe is the big one. 72 million pounds you sank into him. And he looked like he was about a 15 million pound purchase. That was kind of a guess. And he was not good. Phenomenally talented player. And one of those moments was an all right goal against Manchester United. And you're saying, you know what? If he can come up and produce a little bit in the second half of the season, that's a big win because you're turning your big investments as well as a lot of wages in Ozil, Aubameyang, and Lacazette. If you can turn those three guys, along with Pepe, they tried that as a front four. If they can turn into something good, then you're looking at it in a very good spot.
Yeah.
And against Manchester United, they had those four up front, including Pepe, as well as the midfield duo of Torreira and Xhaka. And I think that was a really good lineup. You obviously left out Guendouzi, but if you're gonna be
Air Force One,
if you're gonna be Arsenal, you gotta have competition for places. You gotta make it tough. You gotta be willing, and you gotta be worthy of the shirt. Is a big deal.
Yeah. Earn your place.
And it feels like the worst thing to do would be to fall in a match and not have given your all and say that we could have done more and we could have done things differently. If you get outclassed tactically, just technically, that's okay.
Yeah.
You'll take a step back, you'll figure out how to change things. Arteta is making sure that even if this year is not going to be the year where they have enough actual talent in the squad, they're going to at least play hard, which is a small thing to ask. You shouldn't have to ask it of players who get paid to play football for a living, but it is something you have to be asked.
Speaking of that, coming in to Everton, Carlo Ancelotti, a really big signing for Everton. Like surprising after getting let go by Napoli. Even though he got them through to the group stage in the Champions League, they were sitting 7th in Serie A. Obviously not good enough.
Yeah,
the players were rumored to be turning on him. Same thing that happened to him at Bayern. He's a great European manager, not necessarily a great domestic manager, which is what makes it really interesting for him to be at Everton.
Maybe they have aspirations for European football. I think Everton have invested the kind of money that means that you should be there. And Ancelotti reminds me a lot of Rafa Benitez at Newcastle because I think Ancelotti's a bigger manager than Rafa. At least in my view, three-time Champions League winner. And so he's not to say he's bigger than Everton, but he's won more than Everton has. And so that means that he is going to bring at least a winning pedigree. And I think that he lacks the passion for the individual club that Arteta maintains for Arsenal, as we mentioned just previously. But he's going to be interesting in can he take a different approach? We see a lot of club legends managing their clubs right now versus is he going to be very tactically good and is he going to capitalize on the talent? Moise Kean is a guy who I'm really looking at to try and turn him around because he was a runner for one of the best young players in Europe. And then he signed for Everton. They're saying this is a big signing, and then he flopped. And there's no other way to describe it. He needs to turn it around, and I think he could turn it around because he's obviously a massively talented player, and it's a question of can Ancelotti get the best out of his players and the talent that exists. Can they translate those investments?
How do you explain that FA Cup showing against Liverpool? They're crosstown rival, Merseyside derby. Liverpool playing aside, they had one or two, Gomez and Lallana and
and
Miller
Miller.
started, came out
Very early.
Marucci,
Very, very early.
and they lose 1-0, and they played well the first 26 minutes, and
Yeah.
they didn't have a shot. I think their last shot on the goal was 38th minute or
Yeah.
something like that. And then just did not show any heart in the second half, and fan base just ripping them, showing up at the training facility to yell at the players. And granted, it was like 7 fans, but still, like that's not good.
Exactly.
And there's rumors like Duncan,
Ferguson, yeah.
Duncan Ferguson, Big Dunk. God, I'm tired, struggling today. Is still in the managerial room, and players have been popping off at him, and that's the last guy that, as we talked about, that you want to be yelling at. So there's just a lot of discord amongst the players, and I think he's going to have to do some house cleaning.
It is very interesting, but ultimately, Everton need to trust a vision going forward, because a lot of times what we see with Premier League clubs is you need to stick by with what you're trying to do. You cannot change your plans long term. Liverpool did it with Klopp. City did it with Pep. Maybe you struggle a bit early on, and that's what Liverpool did. They lost a European Cup final against Sevilla in a pretty devastating manner. And yet they trusted with him. They kept investing in the players that would win, and they played to their outs. They knew that this is the way we're going to win and eventually succeed. We're not going to try and do what's safer. And I think they got to do the same thing with Ancelotti. Everton got to do, because
Well, they have that patience. They have to invest in the right type of players.
Everton
that fit.
fans love to talk about a shift in the dynamic in Merseyside, where this is the transfer window where we transform things. We're ahead of Liverpool again.
Don't worry about Liverpool. Worry about Tranmere Rovers at this point.
You have to focus on one step at a time. And the issue is they are currently in 11th place, and they're trying to swing.
Which is a bounce for them. They were way down there. They were nearly in the relegation zone.
Exactly. And they are trying to bounce back and bring things back to where they should be for Everton. Honestly, they used to be a peripheral top 6 club. A 7th place finish was pretty standard for them. They got to get back there so that way they can push the needle and try and continue the pressure. I think Everton will be disappointed that this is the year where they really kind of capitulated, because this is the year where it's the most wide open. I mean, 31 points is 5th place right now. That's not a ton of points. That's very attainable if you asked the ownership at the beginning of the season, could you get to that point? They probably would have said we should be at that point.
Well, they're at 25 points, right? And again, there's 6 points.
How
out
bad
of
have they
that
been this
25.
year? And they're at
They're
25 points.
they're-
They should have had 4 or 5 more wins, honestly,
Yes.
if they were playing to their talent. But that's been the theme of the Premier League this year. Teams have just not been who we thought they were. And it's a question of, is this who they really are? Like, are they really not this good, this lack of passion? And it's a theme for everybody. Are Liverpool this good? Are Manchester City struggling this much? Are Chelsea this good? Are Leicester this good? Are Wolves this good? Are Arsenal this bad? Are Everton this bad? Or West Ham this bad?
This season has been truly impossible to really comprehend. I mean, they lost to back-to-back Norwich and Leicester. Leicester, you can understand. Norwich, maybe not. Draw Spurs, lose to Brighton, beat West Ham, lose to Burnley.
Like it's just inconsistency is what you see, and the bottom line is passion and some semblance of a future is what you got to show in order to get some support from the fans, and not have them showing up at your training ground yelling at you. That's the ultimate goal for new managers.
Quote of the year from Carlo Ancelotti when they beat Liverpool in the first match they played in the Champions League this year. He's like, well, the good news is for Liverpool, for you, Klopp, is that when Napoli beat you, you go on to win the Premier League, or the Champions League. So.
Hey, he's not wrong, and now he's hopefully, in his eyes, he's going to hope that he doesn't have to see them win the Premier League when he enters into Merseyside.
All right, that'll do it for us. Jack, Conrad, this has been the Footy 5. Take care now.